Welcome to Small Business, Big Network, the podcast for small business owners who want big results from their networking. I'm Liz Drury, a freelance voiceover artist who knows that if you're not working, then networking could help. Barbara Ann Fitzpatrick is the founder of Kindred Business Networking. She's all about net giving rather than networking, and one of her top tips for net giving is serving, not selling. Thank you very much for being my podcast guest today, Barbara.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Liz. Lovely to be here.
Now, what is it that you do, Barbara? Tell me, you've got more than one business, haven't you?
I do have more than one business. My main business is Kindred Business Networking, which is a networking group, and I have that here in the UK, and I've also just launched in Ireland. And then my other business is a network marketing business called Arbon, where I direct sell a range of products online that are vegan and plant-based and across skincare, makeup, nutrition and personal care products.
Mm-hmm. And have you always worked in these kinds of fields? What's your background?
No, absolutely not. My entire career has been in the corporate space, and I was in client relationship management, but across many different industry sectors, from technology to financial services to corporate travel, but always leading teams and managing global accounts, just for different types of businesses.
And so when you were in that corporate space, was networking part of what you did as part of your job?
Well, I didn't really realize it at the time, but yes, I was a really strong networker, but only in the corporate space. So all my connections were on LinkedIn, and I seemed to be able to go into an organization and find my way around it very quickly and getting people to engage with me, but probably didn't really realize that at the time.
Yeah. So it was something that you were a natural at, I guess.
I think so, yeah, I think so. Just gathering people together and getting people to be aligned and engaged and helping people to be their sort of authentic self and feel that they were in a safe place, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what was it that made you want to start up your own network?
Well, to be honest, I was right at the top of my game in the corporate space, and my role was made redundant. And for anyone who's been in the corporate space, redundancy is part of employment now. But this time, I was in my mid-50s, and I found it really difficult to get a role back at the same level in the corporate space. And the perception, at least from my experience, was whether you were a man or a woman, it wasn't sexist, but it was ageist, that actually in your 50s, you're considered to be over the hill. So I did some freelance work and some contract work, but could never really get back to the level I was at. And I felt like it was, I was at the top of my game. I just won a leadership award, and all of a sudden my livelihood was kind of taken away from me. So I had to reinvent myself.
Yeah. And it's a shame, isn't it, that people of that age are considered over the hill, because you've still got quite a lot of working years ahead of you. And of course, you've got all that experience that you've built up.
That's right, Liz. And also the emotional intelligence of understanding people. You've been maybe down a few blind alleys, so you can prevent people from making mistakes because you've made them yourselves. But it seems that in the corporate space, that counts for very little, that youth is considered to be the currency you have to have, kind of thing. And really the mix of both is what gives businesses the sort of added value. But certainly from my experience, and many of my colleagues, male and female, had exactly the same experience.
It's interesting that it is male and female. It isn't just the women that experience this.
Not from my experience anyway, Liz, yeah.
Yeah. So how did you go about setting your network up? What was the first thing that you did?
Well, to be honest, I had no intention of setting up a networking group. And what I did was as I was growing my Arbon business, I needed to find a different network from my professional network. So I went to lots of networking groups, and some I enjoyed more than others, but I never really felt like I found one that matched my own personal values. And that really gave people value. And I thought, well, there must be lots of people like me who've had to reinvent themselves in their 50s. I've got the benefit of having loads of corporate training, so maybe I can help people and give something back. And I just sort of started what I called Barbara's networking group, and I met once a month, and it just took off. And the people who I'd met from all the other networking groups were in my my contacts, and I just said to them, look, this is what I'm doing. If it's of any interest, come along. And people did, and it seemed to resonate with them.
And how long ago was that?
That was probably, I was certainly before COVID, so it's 2.5, maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And then when COVID came along 2 years ago, people said, please, will you continue with this group? So I'd never heard of Zoom. I didn't, I wasn't on Instagram. I hadn't even heard of that. And I didn't have very many friends on Facebook either, because my whole life was kind of LinkedIn corporate.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'll do this. And I thought, well, I've got to call it something. And I decided to go, obviously it had to be online. So the group wanted to meet twice a month online. And then after a couple of months, I decided that I would brand it as something. So I created Kindred. And the reason I picked the word kindred is because it's an Irish word. It's all about kinship, like-minded individuals, people who think the same, because I seem to generate a lot of people who were aligned and thought the same. So that's how it became Kindred Business Networking. So then when we thought the pandemic was finishing and we came out of the first lockdown, I was launching a new membership organization with my first live event. Had done a big piece of research around what do people want from networking versus what I think I wanted to offer. So I was offering business mentoring and workshops for members, and a members only organization that was had a website, and people could get all their resources as part of their membership on the website. And then pandemic 2 happened, so it had to go all online or stay all online. I had to cancel my first event.
Oh. So before the first lockdown, what kind of format did the meetings take when you were able to meet in person?
So when we met in person, we introduced ourselves to each other. Everybody had a couple of minutes to say who they were, and then I would buddy people up together. So people would make a commitment to do something before the next meeting, and they'd have a buddy that would be a sort of accountability buddy, or someone they could work alongside to sort of do that. But generally it was people just getting to know each other, coming with a view of how they can help and support each other. And people seem to get along together. It seemed to just work.
And did you have to do things differently once you moved it online?
Yes. So when I moved it online, I confined it to a smaller amount of time, and so there's no people getting coffees and the natural, chit chat you would have. Kind of everybody arrives at the same time. So what I decided to do was to give people 2 minutes to say who they were, what they did, and how we can help and support them. And then I would do a number of breakout rooms and focus then on maybe one challenge. And as we became a membership organization, then one member would do a 10-minute business presentation as part of that meeting, which is kind of the way we structure the meetings now for the online, and then in person is slightly different.
Yeah. So when you were meeting in person, whereabouts in the country were you?
Richmond upon Thames. We met in a coffee shop, which can be a bit noisy, and we didn't always have our own room. We managed sometimes to get a private room. So yeah, we met in Richmond upon Thames in just Richmond Centre.
So presumably now you have members from further afield.
Yeah, I've got members from United Arab Emirates. I've people from the north of England. And I also have an Irish group, so sometimes Irish people come to the UK and vice versa.
I think that's been the nice thing about networking online, hasn't it?
Yeah, and if you'd have told me that you could build relationships with people online, I might have challenged you at the beginning. And yet we had our Christmas event dinner last week, and some of us realized we'd never met the other person in person. When you actually thought you had, because you feel like you know them.
Yes. Yeah, it is bizarre, isn't it? So,
So we all got more flexible, didn't we? And
yes. Yeah, I think that's true. People have been, I suppose, at the start pushed out of their comfort zones.
yes, absolutely.
So, who would you say that your network is for? Is there a particular industry that they come from? Is it really varied?
No, it's varied. It's varied in the sense that many of my members do different things. Most of them are provide a service rather than a product,
Hmm.
but most of them provide a service. They are, business to consumer or business to business, and tend not to have tradespeople. Mostly, it's professional services. So I have accountants, lawyers, HR people, social media people, coaches. Um, there's an anti-aging specialist, there's an author, there's a relator, like kind of like an estate agent,
Hmm.
but more like an American estate agent. So it's very different. But the one thing I think that they all are is what I consider, what I call heart-centered.
Hmm.
So they're people with a soul who are passionate about what they do, genuinely want to help others, and to see others to succeed as well. And it's male and female. So I don't have any get out, clauses. I've got 3 VAs in my group, for example,
Hmm.
but they're all completely different.
Yeah, yeah. And do you see your meetings continuing to be online even when eventually we come out of the pandemic?
Well, in the UK, Liz, I'm doing a hybrid model, so we meet once a fortnight online, which everyone can come to, and then we meet once a month in person, which obviously the people who are not in the country or not in the southwest of London can't join that. So the format for the in-person ones is therefore slightly different. So we
Hmm.
don't have a business presentation. We have a spotlight on an issue, and then we can help someone who's got a particular challenge or an issue and really go in depth to how we can kind of help and support them.
Oh, interesting. I think that must be really useful.
Yeah, well, we had someone the last time we met, and she said this has been like having a piece of research done because everybody's offered so much advice and contribution and really helped her with the particular challenge that she had. So yeah, I think people get a lot from that.
Yeah. Now, I know something that you're really keen on, rather than networking, is net giving. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so I coined the phase net giving really after being at a lot of networking events where people were just continually trying to sell to me
Mm.
and I think actually um, net giving, not networking, for me anyway, is a proven model for success. It works in our community, and making time for net giving is really an investment in growing your business. And I think that investment pays off kind of multiple fold. So the main thing about net giving is that people come with an attitude to serve, not sell,
Mm.
and they they sort of think about, finding ways of helping others, and it might not even be a business challenge someone has. When you get to know about who they are or their family, it might be something that's not business related, but they'll still remember how you made them feel
Yeah.
when you offered to help or suggest a solution to them.
Yeah. And so, can you give me some examples of net giving that's happened in your network?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the amount of collaboration that goes on behind the scenes. So last year we had 8 people in the group came together and created one single event, which none of them could have done just singularly
Mm.
on their own. So I think that's one really good example of being able to net give, and just like when people are kind of talking about their challenges, some will say, oh, I know somebody that might be able to help you, I could connect you to this other person. So it's always looking for ways to just help other people, and I think we've all become each other's unconditional ambassadors.
Yeah.
So even if we haven't maybe used someone's service, the fact that we've invested in getting to know, like, and trust them, therefore we feel in a great position to be able to recommend that person
Yeah.
because we know, like, and trust them.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I think, as well, what goes around comes around, and the more that you can help
Yes.
other people, the more you're going to get in return.
Absolutely. I think it comes back multiple fold, Liz.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to people who are maybe just starting out on their networking journey?
Well, I consider sort of five tips. The first one I think is just be your authentic self, because there is only one of you and you are unique. And even if you're doing something that's exactly the same as someone else does, you're not going to do it in the same way.
Yeah.
So it's trusting that actually you might not be everybody's cup of tea, but if you think about how you can help someone, they'll remember how you feel and not what you say. So that would be my first tip. I think the second thing is, before you attend any networking event, just kind of sit down and plan and prepare and think, what's the one thing I can offer people? And be really clear about how you express this. I'm sure you've been at networking events. Someone will introduce themselves and you think, I've no idea what he or she does.
Yes.
And it's literally just, rehearsing it. Get it down to a couple of minutes. Just be yourself and be really ready to listen. Be open and really ready to listen to someone. So I think that's the planning and preparing. The third one I mentioned already is serving, not sell. So come with an attitude of service. And then I think the fourth is being willing to invest the time outside of the networking session to get to know, like, and trust people. So the fortune is always in the follow-up. So set up a 30-minute virtual call. Even if it's a face-to-face meeting, you can still do a virtual call to manage your time. And then ask people questions, because people love to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
And it's about learning to kind of be a good listener. And then my final one, I think, is actually asking for help. Often we're conditioned that asking for help is a weakness, but actually I think asking for help is a strength.
Yeah.
So I think if you can ask for help, people will only be more than too happy if they've been through the same experience or they've had the same challenges to help you. And two heads are always better than one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, most people genuinely do want to help others. And it's nice to feel useful, isn't it? And that you've helped somebody else.
Absolutely, Liz. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So like you say, I think it's not a weakness to ask for help. People often are waiting to be asked.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. So where can people find your network? How can they sign up if they'd like to try out one of your meetings?
So our website is simply just kindrednetworking.uk. We're on Instagram and I'm on LinkedIn as Barbara, as myself, Barbara Fitzpatrick. And we're on Instagram as Kindred Business Networking. We're on Facebook as Kindred Business Networking. Or just go to the website, and on the website you can learn all about how we operate, and you can book the events, and you can come along as a guest by as many as up to 3 times, because it's important we get the fit right.
Yes.
So I like people to feel really comfortable, that they're in a safe place, and try us a few times before we both decide if the match works.
Yeah, that sounds very sensible, because not every kind of networking suits everybody.
That's right. Absolutely. That's why there's so many different kind of types. Some people love speed networking. Personally, it's not for me. I'd prefer to spend a bit more time getting to know people, but that's just my choice.
Yeah. Lovely. Well, thank you very much for joining me. And I love the idea of net giving rather than networking, and serving, not selling. I've made a note of that on my pad. I'm going to write that down so I can see that in front of me. I think that's a really good maxim to live by.
Yes, indeed. Well, thanks very much for your time. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks for listening to Small Business, Big Network. If you found this podcast useful, please do rate, review and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with the rest of your network too.